problem with modern day hitting instruction is that every coach thinks that there's some sort of optimal move that every hitter should make. Some coaches think you should snap your barrel or shift weight into your front foot or kick back your back foot. And so this gets into the idea of motor preferences or movement variability. Just basically the idea that every athlete moves differently and has different preferences in how their body wants to move when they swing or throw. You have a hitter that likes to be super tall in their stance, like Christian Yelich, for example, or you might have a hitter who really wants to get wide and low in their stance, like Jeff Bagwell. Also have hitters that like to keep their elbows relaxed and close together, kind of like a Kike Hernandez. You might also have hitters that like to keep their elbows flared out, kind of like a Freddie Freeman or a Albert Pujols. To really simplify this, I like to classify players into two different categories. So the first one is the tight movers and the loose movers. So loose movers, these kids are hypermobile, they're super flexible, they can get into kind of end range positions that most kids can't get into. And so this can also cause some problems too. Sometimes they have trouble stabilizing their core, sometimes they lose balance a lot. They have a tough time decelerating on the field, just kind of controlling their body. So for them, we like to do a lot of constraint-based movements, right? So like the no feet drill, for example, which is also a short on my channel, it's one of the drills that we do. Every Wednesday I like to post drills, stuff that we do in lessons. So the no feet drill is where you swing, you can't move your feet, forces you to stabilize your obliques and not over-rotate. So that's an example of a drill that I do with like the looser moving kids or players that come into the cage. But the bottom line is that's a very simplified approach, and it does get a little more complicated than that. But every single hitter and every athlete that you see has different motor preferences, and you have to kind of give them instruction and drills accordingly. You can't just give the exact same move to every single kid and expect it to work. I think the problem is what we see a lot is certain coaches will get one really good player kind of later on in their career. They're already kind of an elite athlete, and they just give them one cue that just happens to help that one player. And all of a sudden now, we think that that one cue is going to help everyone in the hitting space. And that could be true to some extent. I think there's a little bit of wisdom to take from every kind of hitting approach and every move or cue that hitters and coaches alike talk about, like the snap of the barrel. That's a really good way to think about getting on plane with the pitch. It's also a really good way to engage the posterior oblique sling that goes from your opposite shoulder to opposite hip. Pushing weight into your front foot, that's a really good way to think about stopping over rotation, right? So is the kickback. So it's not like these moves are wrong necessarily. It's more just like, when do we apply them? That's the more important question that we should ask, is in what situations should we apply certain moves as coaches to help certain types of movers? Because like we established, everybody moves differently. So just logically, there is no single move that every hitter should make or think about in order to get their swing to perform at its best. Something we haven't even touched on yet is the mental aspect of this. As a coach, if you're talking to a player, you might say one thing to that player that might mean something entirely different to a different player. And so we have to be careful in the way that we word certain things too, because it does matter a lot. If I tell a kid not to move their feet and do the no feet movement drill, like to a loose mover, that might get them to stabilize their core, stop over rotating. But if I'm working with a kid who is super tight and they're not super flexible, they're just going to kind of not use their hips at all. And that drill is not going to help them at all. So you have to understand who you're talking to. The motor preferences matter, but also, if one kid takes a certain drill or feel a different way than the direction you wanted it to go in, it might not work for that kid. And that's why lessons will never go out of style. Sports lessons will always be something that is important and a valuable part of athletic development and performance, because there just is no right way to do it. As a coach, you have to be really good at reading people, understanding language communication, relating to people, understanding motor preferences and how kids move and how they like to organize their body to achieve the certain tasks that you're trying to achieve, which in this case is hitting, right? And so we have to be good at all of these different things. Whereas just understanding one single move like snap your barrel isn't going to fix all that, right? One key thing to understand too is I'm not picking on anybody when I make this video. Like the snapping of the barrel, that comes from a coach that I learned from in high school. It's the teacher man guy, where you snap your barrel and let it kind of go around like that. that was super, super helpful for me, especially with my timing, thinking about kind of stretching out your load, hanging on your back leg, keeping the weight there, really helped me adjust to off-speed pitches and stuff like that when I was in high school. And so that's not something that I'm just sitting here like preaching like this guy's wrong, that guy's wrong, I'm right. The idea is that we're asking the wrong questions. It's not like, is the snap of the barrel right? Is swinging down right? It's more like, when and where should we apply these principles? Because the reality is they're both right. Like, you go on ESPN, you'll see A-Rod talking about swinging straight down. You go on YouTube and you watch Teacher Man, he'll be talking about snapping the barrel. Which one's right? They're both right. That's the reality. Is another mode of preference that I see all the time is kids come in here, maybe they swing down. Well, that would really help them to do the snap the barrel thing. And then the kids that come in here that kind of dip their barrel way too much, well, they could probably be helped out by A-Rod's idea of like, bring the knob to the ball and swing down. That's what helped me, because I was kind of like one of those dip the barrel guys later on in my career, right? So, and it doesn't even have to be the same throughout your whole career. Like I said, in high school, snap the barrel helped me. Later in my career, swing down helped me, because it changes. Your motor preferences change over time as well. So when you're doing lessons with the player, it's not the same every time. Over time, they start to develop different habits. They might grow, they might get stronger, they may have an injury, and all of a sudden their motor preferences change. They may have some sort of psychological thing happen that changes how they like to move, right? And there's so many different aspects to this. And so we have to be constantly opening a dialogue and continuing a dialogue with the parents and the player, and making sure that we're understanding, what is going on in their life, right? Athletically, but also psychologically, workload too, like how much are they working out? What other sports are they doing? That helps you understand how to coach that player. So once again, at the end of the day, my argument is that we're just asking the wrong questions. It's not what is the right move, what is the right way to swing, or even throw or run or whatever it is. The right question is, when do we apply these certain feels and cues and ideas about movement that are really popular and help a lot of people? Because it really does depend on the individual.